Hey, welcome everybody. Today, the big question that we're going to be discussing is, are you prepared for what's next? And here's what I mean by that. The World Economic Forum recently came out with their jobs report 2025, came out about 2 weeks ago. And in it, they talk about the seismic shift that we're all currently experiencing with AI. Certainly, we talk about that a lot on the show. But today, we want to dig into that report a little bit more, talk about some of the insights they uncovered, how they're predicting things between 2025 this year and through 2030, how AI is obviously going to have a huge impact, what jobs potentially could be going away, what jobs might be coming around. And ultimately, it comes back to that top question is, are you prepared? Are any of us really prepared? Can we accurately predict what's coming? Well, WEF is definitely tried to do that. They put out, this is like their 6th edition of it. And so we're going to dive into it today. This is a daily AI show. Thank you. Today is January 23rd. We're live as always every weekday at 10 a.m. Eastern. Today I have Aaron, Beth, Andy, and I'm Brian. So we got some of the crew back. Excited everybody here. Thank you, Aaron, for joining us as well. Glad you could be here on here as well, Beth. And like I said, we're going to dive into this report a little bit more, get into some of the key insights, and then just really talk about what does that mean? What does that mean to each of us? What's our opinion of this, if you will, and see where we come from the end of it. So that's it for today. But like, I don't know who wants to maybe sort of dive into this first. I mean, obviously I have a lot of thoughts on it, but Aaron says yes. So Aaron, you're up.
So I'm going to start the show not by talking about the report as such, because for those of you who haven't seen the report, it's 290 pages long. And I don't know about any of you, but I don't have the time to read 290 pages at the moment. So ChatGPT has given me some pointers. But I wanted to sort of raise something a little bit different around it, because I thought, okay, this is all about jobs, and we know that AI is going to have a big impact on it. So I thought, let's see what's actually going on out there in the marketplace. So I went to Australia's #1 job site, as a website called Seek, SEEK.com.au. So I went there and I started doing a few searches and just looking at how many jobs in Australia are being advertised using some AI type terms, for example. So I just jotted down a few random ones. So this is across all of Australia for the last 30 days. There were 31 jobs mentioned that had the word ChatGPT, one single word in it. 31 jobs. I don't know how many jobs are on the site at the moment, but I'm sure there's tens of thousands. Then I looked at those. A lot of them were marketing jobs, which kind of doesn't surprise me because I'm in the industry. And then I typed in artificial intelligence, 2 words, 285 jobs. More significant number, but still really not many. For comparison, if you type in the word marketing, there's 28,521 jobs. And if you even type in Microsoft Word, there's 3,991 jobs. So wow. I can't speak for the US market, but in Australia at the moment, I think it's pretty safe to say that it's still really early days in terms of people requiring any kind of AI expertise. And the most common jobs I'm seeing are marketing jobs, and also people that are maybe involved in the techie propeller head stuff around building large AI systems, coders, those sort of people. There's the average office admin job is not currently requesting that you know how to use ChatGPT or Midjourney or anything like that. So I thought I'd start with that rather than just what's in the report, just for some comparison.
No, I love
That's
that.
Great. I like that information.
Yeah.
So let me give you the big picture from the report. This is all about the shifts in the global labor market, and it's focusing on global employment. Like, what's the number of jobs globally? And then it breaks it down by regions and nations and so on. Way too complicated to try to do that. But let me give you the top line picture for the globe. So, because there are going to be major impacts on workforce development in each country, it's going to be different by those. But overall, by 2030, this is just a 5-year outlook. There are going to be 170 million new jobs, but 92 million jobs are going to be displaced. Now that's a net gain of 78 million jobs globally. Yay. But not in the report, but if you go and look online and retrieve the global population forecast during that same period, it's slowing, right? So right now we're at about 8.2 billion. and it's forecast by 2030 to be 8.5 billion. So let's call that 300 million roughly, okay? 300 million new people, and there's 78 million new jobs. What I read out of this report, when you put those two things together, there's 220 million new unemployed people by 2030. So that's a big shift, and it's not even addressed when you focus purely on the labor market, not the global human market. So I think there's a bigger problem underneath all this thing. And then there's some Pollyanna stuff in here that I want to point out. So let's just suppose that one of the things that's going to happen is that there's going to be major shifts in the demand for various jobs. And, they do say, okay, look, we're going to be displacing a lot of jobs, but good, that's going to increase demand for flexibility, creativity, and all these things, which don't really align with any reasonable entry-level jobs. Those are certainly skills that you need to have, but saying that the demand for those things is going to create new jobs is a stretch, in my opinion. So let me tell you one of the other things that comes out of this thing. That when you ask what's driving all of this, one of the major things is economic uncertainty. And so I asked, Notebook LM, what do they mean by economic uncertainty? And what they really mean is slower growth. And I'll tell you what is going to be driving slower growth. But slower growth overall in the economies of the globe is a major factor here, because in order to address the 300 million new humans, you need to grow the economies in a commensurate way. But there's slower growth anticipated, and so companies pull back. When they see the forecast for slower growth economically, they don't hire as well. So that's putting a crimp on just the overall employment outlook, in my view. Now, there's economic uncertainty. It's slower economic growth, but here's this line from the report. But this is also predicted to increase the demand for skills such as creative thinking, resilience, and agility. What does agility mean? Agility means is no longer do you have access to a reliable source of income. You have to be able to bounce and weave and dodge in a new environment where it's not so secure. Now, they do say that broadening digital access is expected to be one of the largest job creators. So you wire the world, make it possible to be a contributor to the global economy remotely, and that's going to have a net increase of 10 million jobs, roughly, they forecast in here. And that AI and information processing technologies are expected to create another 11 million jobs while displacing 9 million, for a measly 1 million increase in that demand for something like 220 million missing jobs, in the population. And then robotics and autonomous systems are projected to be the largest net displacer of jobs, with a net loss of 5 million. So a picture emerges in my reading of this thing of, wow, slower growth forecast, weaker job demand, but there's retraining and upskilling expected to help out a little bit, retraining current workers, supporting employee health and well-being, and importantly, they note facilitating remote work. That's going to make it possible for more people to work. Well, what is the current administration just moving toward with their executive orders? No, you can't work remotely. This is one of the blindest things that could possibly happen in our country. And I don't think it's happening globally, right? That's not going to be one of the major trends that you're going to observe in the EU, for example, that, we're going to make everybody go back to the office. There's also an issue of aging populations, and that, as birth rates decline, and, that's going to affect some of this. And here's the one that I want to finalize on. There is a major trend at foot, which is the reversal of globalization and global free trade. And they refer to that in this report as geoeconomic fragmentation, where you had a trend over the past 30 years of linking all the economies together. Now there's geoeconomic fragmentation. There's going to be a desire to have everything contained within your own nation state, all the resources necessary, and don't rely on anything outside because you can't rely on them. Why? Because somebody's going to slap 25% tariffs on everything that's coming into the country that you used to be selling to and buying from in the global free trade economies. And this makes people and companies likely to reshore operations. And there's going to be, unfortunately, limited multilateral cooperation on critical issues such as climate change and pandemic preparedness as a result of this fragmentation and isolationist approach to economies. That geoeconomic fragmentation sounds like something you can kind of dismiss, but that's a central theme in this report. But they also then come to the conclusion that, oh, things are going to happen which net to a major increase in the number of jobs in the world. But I read that as being insufficient to really stabilize global economies. That's my take on this report.
Yeah. Thoughts on that, Beth, or thoughts on it as well? Want to make sure I get everybody's thought in.
I think there are a bunch of factors that are likely to impact global economies, right? AI is one of them, and it's the focus of our show. So we're seeing it through that lens. But AI is also coming during all of the other things that are happening globally. I do think that it's really interesting, and I've made this observation before, that the people who are saying that this will lead to abundance for everyone, this will create massive opportunities, are not doing it with their billions of dollars and trillions of dollars access now, right? You could actually prioritize laying that groundwork at the same time that you're doing the other things. It seems very much like, okay, so hang on, we're going to do all this stuff, and then at the end, it's going to be amazing, right? So I find that a little bit of a hesitance in this context. But the other thing that I find really interesting is the continuing theme that you really are responsible for your own, you are an independent contractor now. If you haven't thought of yourself as an independent contractor, welcome to the independent contractor. Whether it's gig economy or more traditional employment, you really need to be paying attention to the skills that your kind of position is going to need now and in the future. We talked a little bit about people basically training AI to take their jobs, and that the initial response to that is that that's a negative. I would love for everyone in the context of this report to start seeing that as a positive, and the ability for you to become the person who is knowledgeable about AI currently as it relates to the tasks that you do and what's moving in the future, because that's going to give you the ability to address it, talk about it, bring something to your supervisors, become your supervisor, because now things are and now more things are possible with AI. The thing that jumped out at me was just a really simple stat of, they think a third of job tasks will be done by human alone, a third will be done purely by AI and automation, and a third will be a collaboration between the two, an augmented human for greater greater time efficiency, greater capacity. And that sounds right to me. And that's by 2030, right? So we're in these next 5 years.
Yeah, I read that as well. That was the exact same stats I was going to pull out. So I'm glad you did, Beth. And I think it's I think prior to 2030, I think 2030 is anytime you're making predictions like this, at least for AI, I think it's way, way too far out in the future. Like it's just way too far out. I would much prefer seeing by 2027, such and such and such and such, 24, 48 months away, whatever it might be, or I guess 24 months away, right? 2 years. I was just listening to, I can't remember the gentleman's name. He's the chief product officer at OpenAI. He's out at Davos, and he was talking to a Wall Street reporter. I probably watched a 35-minute interview yesterday. I was watching it on YouTube last night. And same gentleman that was on the 12 days of OpenAI, if anybody can find that. But anyway, that guy, I think his name's John or something like that, but he's chief product officer. And he was talking about this, and he was talking about AGI, and they were talking about how the interviewer was saying, "Oh, I just interviewed the CEO of Anthropic yesterday, and he was saying by 2027 we'll have AGI." The guy from OpenAI's response was, "I think that's too far away. I think we're closer to that." Now, this is somebody with obviously internal knowledge, and not to make this a whole conversation about AGI because that's not really the topic, but I do think it's important in terms of predictions, because he was pointing out, and I think we could extrapolate on this idea that look how fast the '01 models got to where they were. And the example he was giving was it went from, on their benchmark tests, it went from the 1,000th best coder to the 150th best coder in 3 months, right? So just take that as one example. And then you look at by 2030, 33% is going to be evenly split 3 ways, tasks performed by humans. Look, 33%, there are many, many tasks that are still going to be clearly still human driven with AI support. So to me, a lot, even ones that we're not even thinking about today, your plumber, your people doing physical labor, construction, all the things that make the world go around, people in industries that we wouldn't traditionally see as technology forward are absolutely going to have AI as part of their solution. It doesn't mean they're out of a job per se. I know that's a lot of part of it. What I actually see is the plumber is using heads-up displays and AI that are just in their glasses that are no bigger than the Meta glasses, or these aren't Metas, but you know what I mean, no bigger than that help them quickly assess sizes of the pipes and where they can get it, maybe just in time shipping. It's so that they're able to basically, know that they can arrive on a scene, figure out if they're like a residential plumber, figure out the solution and have the parts delivered to the house they're working on, all within the first hour of them working on a solution. And AI may support them in those ways because they're the expert and they're using AI. So when I look at 33, I'm like, no, I expect way more through human machine collaboration, that third statistic of 34%. By 2030, I would expect it to be well over 50%. I would imagine it would be harder in 2030 to point to a job that is not using AI, akin to saying, tell me a job that doesn't use a computer in some place. Now, so there's going to be tons of people that raise their hand and go, I never touch a computer. Don't know even how to turn one on. And I'm very, very successful. I've been doing my career for 20 years and I make, $250 a year or something like that. And I never turn on a computer. Hell, I've never even had an email. Sure. Those are outlier cases. But by 2030, that people, because it'll be so easy to have it on their devices, wrist, watch, phones, wearables, like we talked about on Monday, that AI wouldn't be an integral part, because why wouldn't it? It's like having the world's smartest being, not human being, world's smartest being in your pocket, like we used to get the internet on our phone. Come on. So I think that number is really, really off if I had to guess, because I think trying to predict 2030 is insane when it comes to AI. Just try to predict the next 12 months.
Right. So one of the things that Paul Raitzer made, and one of the points that Paul Raitzer made on their podcast, the Artificial Intelligence Show, was you have to think about the knowledge base of the people who are answering the questions. And most of those people are not going to be aware in the level that people who are really inside the bubble are about how fast things are going. Right. So by 2030, can give their own kind of anticipation, but it's the same like with economists. Everybody, it's really hard to imagine a future that you don't know really what it's going to be like. So almost everybody is answering these kinds of questions based on the AI of today. If I see the AI of today, I can imagine that if it just, people got more knowledgeable, it just got a little bit better, I can imagine the way it would transform my business. That's not the AI of 2030. That's not the AI of 2026. That's not the AI of Q4, right? Like,
that's my point. I think you're
right?
absolutely right, Beth.
Yeah.
By the way, the gentleman's name was Kevin Wheel. I was way off when I said John, but Kevin Wheel is the chief product officer at OpenAI. I'm horrible with names if you haven't figured out. If you follow this show long enough, I can barely get our names right. Never mind. Ethan Malik and Elon Musk. But
I'm pretty sure there was a great blooper like 3 days ago, where you introduce yourself as Carl.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, like I said, names are not my strong suit. I got away with a lot of "Hey buddy" and "Hey bud" when I used to teach karate, but when I was a teenager. So this isn't a 47-year-old problem. When I was a teenager, I called all the kids buddy and pal and chief and all those kind of things because I couldn't keep names straight and all that. But I wanted to bring up back to your point, Beth, about this. I think I agree with you. You're absolutely right. And people I didn't think about it this way, but they surveyed 1,000 people for this World Economic. They tell that in like sort of the abstract, if you will, at the beginning of the report about where it came from and how they felt like that was a diverse spreading of blah, blah, blah for their data set, which is important, right? But you're probably right. What I think people often do, because what other context do you have other than the last 24 months with AI to say like, well, I lived and worked through the .com boom and I was an early adopter. I was on bulletin board systems. I used to single sign up for individual internet connections to local people, and I had a phone book on my desk. And yes, it was at least 5 years before I was probably in college. I graduated in 2000. Before I was in college, and I was like going to computer labs, but nobody had really computers in their dorm rooms. Nobody was like, you had to be rich to have that, right? So we would go to computer labs, and there was a more adoption of the technology, but certainly there was no YouTube. Nobody was watching videos on the internet, and so on and so forth, right? So if you live through it, like, or even in the last 10, 15 years, it's easy to look and go like, well, yeah, 5 years sounds like actually a pretty advanced pace. But as we know, if you really look at the adoption, again, as Kevin Wheel pointed out, this is unique because the costs are going lower faster while the performance is going through the roof exponentially.
The hockey stick is getting a lot more vertical.
And he said, where else do you have technology like this getting exponentially cheaper while also getting exponentially smarter? And they're putting out new models that are costing less and less. It's a good point. It's a good point.
Let me touch on this point that you raised earlier, Brian, about how fast the models are being developed and advanced. And I read something very interesting on Medium about the idea that there are already in OpenAI and Google and Anthropic, there are already advanced models, which they are way beyond the current models that are publicly available and commercially practical, that are the ones that cost so much money to build, but their inference costs are also very high. So they're not putting them out there in the public. What they're using them for is to train the new models and to generate the synthetic data that's necessary to achieve these major advances in the smaller, cheaper models that are commercially viable. Right. So that relates to the whole question of when do we achieve AGI? It may be that we have AGI already, but it hasn't been let behind the curtain, right? I mean, it hasn't been let out from the curtain yet. Why? Because it has a very high economic value to the companies that are developing smaller commercial models. And that's what's training those models. Those big guns are behind the scenes and they're working there. I want to shift over to what the WEF report says will be declining as employment. And then also what they say is going to be increasing in employment to see, which jobs are really going to be affected. And on your point, Brian, about a plumber having access to AI that it helps them, I don't see that increasing the number of plumbers. that helps them do their job better, but it doesn't increase jobs. So anyway, I'm not sure that it's relevant to the question of, where will jobs be in demand? But I do buy your point that there are many jobs that, don't really require a whole lot of AI assistance, but require monkey fingers and a person who's experienced in the process, that are resilient to these changes that are the impact of AI on knowledge workers, particularly, which is where it's really going to happen.
It might, and I don't know this, Andy, keep going with your point, but it might actually drive more people as jobs perhaps become more scarce, as people get displaced in their jobs. I will tell you, I know people personally who are moving back to the trades, maybe because they had a love of it, maybe because they always wanted to be a carpenter, whatever the reason is, right? And so somebody who makes hand-built furniture, yes, we could probably create a robot that can carve all the wood and do it all in a CNC machine or whatever, right? But there's still something to that artistry of somebody creating, because it's more of the artistic work. Anyway, my point to that is I do see people moving back towards the physical labor and the trades and stuff like that. I think
it's a smart move. I think it's a smart move. If you can find demand for such a job, right?
Yeah, or if nothing else,
there's probably enough plumbers in the Santa Cruz area to satisfy the demand. I don't have to wait 2 months to get a plumber out to my house.
Well, and my point was AI may drive more people towards those, where I understand what you're saying, but we do have a lack of plumbers. We have a lack of tradespeople. We know this, that are like journeymen and stuff like that. But I don't know this, but like I would imagine, as people are contemplating college and in that year, and then obviously changing of careers years later, maybe somebody in their 40s who says, well, I wasn't going to be an electrician because I don't want to climb into attics. And all of a sudden there's new technologies or new AI where maybe that bridges the gap for me, and it takes away the stuff I thought I might hate about it, and allows me to do more of what I thought I might love about that job, which in turn would perhaps make me change to that career. Whereas in the past, I might go, well, I didn't want to be in attics at 120 degrees. My knees are bad because I'm, whatever the reasons are. So
yeah,
I don't know. It's possible.
I think you're right that AI does improve the agility of the workforce in transitioning from one job to another in order to chase the demand for those positions. I think that's a very important contribution of AI and its educational qualities. Let me just mention what the world's perspective is on which jobs are going to be declining. Remember, this is the global view. So many of these have already happened in the more advanced, technologically adept countries. Bank tellers. Boy, I think that already happened, didn't it?
Who's still working in banks?
Bank closed down.
Clerk, door-to-door sales. I've never seen a door-to-door salesman here recently in the United States.
We still get them all the time, but they're solar panels. That's the big one.
Okay. Right. Administrative assistants, legal secretaries, printing trades, right? Is there such a thing anymore? It seems like all printing is automatic now, but maybe there's some people out there with printing presses. I don't know. Telemarketers. Aaron, I think in the marketing space, they're saying that this WEF report is saying telemarketers specifically are declining. That's probably as a result of displacement by AI.
I actually know people that are building and deploying systems that use AI to do telemarketing at the moment. I haven't seen them in action, but I've heard that they do a fairly reasonable job. And I've done some telemarketing before. It's a shitty job. If you're good at it, you can make lots of money. But if you could hand it to a machine and it just could dial for dollars for it nonstop, you would never hire a live salesperson ever again to do it. So agreed on that one. Okay,
now here's some of the jobs that you can aspire to. The number one list on the list, AI and machine learning specialists. Well, I've got news for you, AI and machine learning specialists. If you're just starting your curriculum for that thing, GPT-5 and then 6 and 7 and 8 are going to do that work, ahead of you. You're not going to be able to catch up to what they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Financial technology engineers. Maybe there's a special, little backwater for financial technology engineers. I'm not sure. Robotics engineers. I can see that there might be, just both on the mechanical side and the electronic side and the manufacturing side, when robotics actually reach that level where we're buying them as consumers. Like, we're going to put humanoid robots in our houses. That's an enormous market. And I can see there being a large demand for things in robotics that aren't replaceable by AI directly. Digital transformation specialists. Hey, you think there are a lot of enterprises out there saying, okay, we need to buy digital transformation now. I need to find me a specialist who's, Accenture's got that kind of covered, BCG, all that sort of thing at the enterprise level.
We have change management specialists on our panel. So
that's right.
Hello.
Right. And sustainability specialists. So there's just a lot of jargon in here that I think if you take a cynical view as I do about this whole thing, I don't think they're really assessing the kind of disruption that's underway right now as a result of all of those declining positions and many more positions in the knowledge workspace that are going to be not replaced by, but it's going to be possible for, the small crew of people running a small business to accomplish all the functions of the business with the support of automated systems.
Right.
Yeah. Can I jump in here, guys?
Mm-hmm.
So, two things I'm going to say. Number one, I got to give a shout out to Jude for the classic comment. Plumbers crack will survive AI. Thumbs up, Jude. That wins my award for the night. And secondly, as my primary, so those of you who know me, my background is in marketing. So a big part of what I do is helping clients make sales, find new customers, that kind of stuff. Now, I know, because I'm trying to do this myself, I know that as AI gets better, it's going to start being able to do a lot of jobs that you might hire teams. Sorry, we talked about salespeople there, marketing people, they're right in the headlines for this sort of stuff. I cannot see that in the next 5 years, if AI is good enough to replace a whole building full of people to run your business, particularly in the knowledge space, rather than maybe the building things and stacking shelves and that kind of stuff, I can't see why employers won't just say, I'm not going to hire all those people. I don't need all that crap in my life. I'll just buy my AI subscription for $50 or $100 or $200 an hour and make my own business. And there's been talk out there for a while now. Who's the first person that's going to get to a one-person business to $1 billion with the help of AI? That stuff is going to put a hell of a lot of white-collar workers and knowledge workers out of jobs, or force them into having to go in very different paths. So I think they've kind of ignored a lot of that in this report.
Right. Well, and that, is there, so we've talked about the one-person unicorn, the one-person billion-dollar business. Is there a mythical animal for the trillion-dollar business? Because I don't know that that's the that's like the epitome or the limit, right? We're definitely moving in other directions. The other thing that I think we are not really taking into consideration, and it's something that it's a study that you learn about in early psychology training, and that's the idea of what happens in a crowded cage, right? So you do experiments, you have lots of space, right? So we have Canada and Australia with lots of room for lots of people. But when resources start to get compressed and the number of people either stay the same or start to grow, or people in this context is mice, yes, the behavior between the residents in that environment starts to become more competitive as opposed to collaborative. And so we're looking at all of this within, it's not like we don't have some crowded cage behavior now, but we're looking at this from within our current circumstances. And if we go back to the stats that Andy was saying earlier, we are likely to be not increasing jobs to the level that we're increasing the people who need them. And what does that do with this kind of specialized AI? Other thing is, we're not accounting for AIs, but does AI start to perceive their resources as also being limited? Or Greg says robots will fix robots, right? What happens when we're ooh, that's too much, we don't want robots to fix robots, right? For some reason data couldn't fix data. Geordi had to fix data on Star Trek: The Next Generation. Like, I'm not entirely sure why that was happening, other than maybe you don't want the robots to be able to fix the robots, but this isn't a screen play. This is like real stuff, and probably robots will just know how to fix robots, right? Like, yeah.
You know, Gareth was saying, is it one or multiple smaller one AI or multiple smaller specialized AIs that can check each other? I tend to think the latter. Like, I don't think there's one all powerful whatchamacallit behind the curtain. You know, Wizard of Oz, wizard behind the curtain, right? I don't think that's how this works. I think it's hundreds, if not thousands, of specialized smaller AIs that do all interact and work with each other, more akin to the way I think of blockchain. And for all that people give, you know, blockchain crap, and maybe that's not the flavor of the month at the moment, that technology I still think has a lot to play into the future of how we look at like decentralized fact checking and stuff. But in the blockchain, it's actually people on their computers doing these decentralized facts to ensure that some financial transaction went through. If it was your mortgage and it was on a blockchain, it would be any changes would have been caught, right? That's the idea of it, is that the blockchain would catch that. I'm not an expert on blockchain, so don't come at me. But my point to it is, I see that with AI as to combat against hallucinations. We may never ever solve for hallucinations with AI, but there'll be so many other AIs that are absolutely like in real time fact checking against what one AI does, that in effect, it would be like having 30 brilliant people in a room. And should one perhaps make an error, there's 29 others to quickly look at it with different skill sets to quickly get rid of that. In the probably not too near future, we won't actually see that process. We will literally just see the end one result in ChatGPT. We will never be aware that in milliseconds, 30 different AIs, if you're being exact about it, all looked, or 300 or 3,000 or 30 million AIs, all looked at this individual prompt, and within milliseconds came back with the most true one answer. That's how we'll probably get rid of like hallucinations and things like that, is it'll be AI checking AI, but it's such a volume that you're going to have really, really, really smart models that are almost never wrong, because how could they be? It's sort of like the idea of that blockchain, right? That's the way I think about that.
Right. And Greg is saying AI hallucinations are simply expressions of AI imagination. And yes, right? Like we call it a hallucination when the AI is wrong. We don't call it a hallucination when the AI is correct, but it's actually the same process. But now you're sort of aggregating, right? So if like 100 of them look at this, then you go for the most probable that the most agree on, kind of thing. Absolutely, Brian.
And I'm gonna give myself a small plug here and say, go check out my LinkedIn post for today, like literally from about 2 hours ago, because I put up a video on LinkedIn playing around with Google Gemini 2.0 Flash's new thinking model. It's free right now. It's literally free for you to go play with. Go look at the reasoning, the actual thinking, drill down on the thinking and read through that, and tell me that doesn't show you exactly where these models are going and how it deals with hallucinations. And here's the interesting thing. In that example, you'll see it in the video, I explained it. I gave it one of our conundrums from our newsletter. And I said, write 2 case studies, pro and for this conundrum, because I wanted to see the thinking process for the conundrum. Okay. It did a wonderful job. I showed that in the video. However, I found after this point, because it gave me a lot of citations, but not links. And I found out that they were theorized or suggested or synthesized is the word it used, synthesized citations, AKA they're not real citations. So I asked it, because I was dealing with a thinking model. I said, I wonder what caused you to not actually do the real research and create synthesized research. Guys, in the description and the thinking of the model, the 7 seconds it took to give me the answer, it explained, to your point, Beth, why it's not really hallucinations that we're looking at. It's just how it went about solving the problem. And it explains it in detail, as well as the thinking in there. And what I was saying in the video is, this shows you how to now go back and talk to the model in better ways. This is teaching us to prompt better, because now we have this insight that says, you're right, I did synthesize these, but here's why I did it. the AI, why I did it, Gemini, why I did it, because of this, this, and this. And I assumed from this, and I looked to that. It's all these human words. And you go, oh, this makes much more sense. It's not that it decided to randomly up and trip me up with fake citations. It legit felt it was going in the right direction based on the temperature model of 0.7 and other things I had set in there. Anyway, I only say that. I know that's getting off topic for this, but it really is, again, it goes back to how fast these models are getting smart, how much we all have to adapt. And going to Sinead Boval's post on LinkedIn, she's the futurist. We talked about her before. She's wonderful. I really love her line of thinking and how she looks at things. She's so well-spoken. And she wrote a post talking about this World Economic Forum. She said the next 5 years aren't about jobs revolution as much as they are a skills revolution. What's becoming increasingly clear is that skills, more than degrees, are now the priority in hiring decisions. It is easier to predict which jobs will be automated than to identify new ones AI will create. The workers who thrive in this era will be those who can lean into AI tools, embrace change, and demonstrate adaptability, creativity, and resilience. Organizations, too, must recognize the value of investing in their current workforce. Simply trying to hire their way into the future is not a sustainable strategy in a rapidly evolving labor market. And she goes on to say a few more things. 1,000% agree with her on that. I think that ties back into what the overall arching thing was. Are you prepared? And so we're all figuring it out. None of us have said here like definitively like this is how I'm going to be successful in 2030, because a lot of it is guessing. But the way we've all collectively looked at it, and obviously everybody that's in our chat, and hopefully everybody that's subscribed and liked us, was please do that if you enjoy these conversations, is to do just that. The whole point to this show, the Daily I Show, was to say we're going to show up, a couple of us who were random strangers when we started, are going to show up daily as much as we can, and we're going to have conversation in this. Why? Because we're trying to do our best to prepare ourselves for an uncertain future, and we want to take others along for the journey. Not because we think we're experts, not because we think we're right all the time. It's to bring our expertise where we have it from our perspectives, unique as they are, Perth and what Andy has done, and Beth, what you do, and your expertise, and Carl and everybody else, Jimmy, and bring that to the conversation so that you can be better prepared. So that when you see these adoption changes, you go, you know what? This is not the first time I've heard about this. And maybe I need to start leaning in to this, that, or the other in my industry. So anyway, just want to kind of put that out there, but that's sort of the whole reason that the show exists.
Right. So one of the things that you're bringing up in my head in terms of the research and the thinking, and if we go back to the multiple, like how quick will it be for multiple agents to have a say in what the answer is? A portion, and I think like increasing portion, maybe 35, 40, 45, 50% of the content on the internet right now is AI generated. Doesn't mean it's bad, doesn't mean it's wrong, right? But what happens when those two things impact each other? Can the agent now spin up the references that it wanted to use and right? Like, can it create its own documentation as it's giving the answer, so that now you see that there is a documented thing there? Now, if you're looking for published states in journals and that kind of stuff, maybe not. But like we had a show about, are you ready? Are we ready for what's already happened? And we're not ready for what's already happened. And what are the systems that prevent something like that? Right? The current publishing thing, you couldn't publish something and backdate it in the way that humans would do that, because that takes a lot of time. Could you, if that system is automated and your automated research paper that is using that system's data, talk to each other and say, hey, this study didn't happen, but we can tell from these other studies this is the result it would be. Let's just skip it. Let's just publish that. We'll publish it because we know how to write those things. Yes, I'm having a we conversation in the agents, which is very anthropomorphic. It is not the way that would happen. But like that kind of thing, I'm not sure that we're in a place where we're recognizing that, because we're still looking at data on the internet as though it's data on the internet. and has some level of validity.
And back to Aaron's
That's
earlier point
bit
about
scary,
looking up
man.
the
Thanks.
If you call me for your nightmares, but also for your change management and how to prepare for them. So, like, hey,
yeah, for 100%. 100%. I was just going to say, Aaron, it goes back to your original point about looking up the jobs in the Australian market and on that site Seek, and just talking about how ChatGPT isn't like a skill. It doesn't come up in comparative to marketing, right, or something like that. So there is still a bit of a lag for the industry to catch up. I know I was hearing yesterday from one of our own in the comments, sent us an email talking about how the competition is fierce for something like well, for me, like an AI strategist, because companies still have to define what an AI strategist does. They have to understand what roles I do. Now, I work in sales, that's where a lot of my focus is. But oftentimes I'm first explaining and then selling services. That's just
right.
natural. So a company says, I'm interested in this. What's the first thing I have to do? I have to tell you what it is before I can sell you on why I think this solves your pain points. And I've said this 100 times. It reminds me of the early days of when I owned the CrossFit gym. People thought it was a Bowflex, like an at-home piece of equipment. And so I often had to explain what CrossFit was, standing in the middle of a grocery store because I had a t-shirt on, before I could even sell them on the concept that they might want to pay $115 to come to my gym back in 2011, when the typical gym membership was $20 a month. That it was a huge lift. And so I feel very, very similar to that in AI. I have to explain it first. So yes, it makes sense to me that there's not a lot of jobs out there right now that definitively have these descriptions, because businesses don't know. And I talk to them every day. And they don't know what they don't know.
That was exactly the phrase I was going to say, right?
Yeah, it's not, and they're trying, by the way. I want to say this. Everybody I talk to has an earnest attempt to understand, to comprehend, and to deploy where it makes sense for their business. I don't talk to bad actors out there. I talk to people who are trying to make a real difference in their business, and hopefully in the bottom line, and hopefully that means prosperity for everybody, that they're not closing doors. But truthfully, a lot of times the conversation starts at the basics. And so that's why it makes sense to me when you give those numbers and I go, yeah, there's not enough understanding out there in the definitions of what these roles do in order for people to go, that I need an AI strategist. I know exactly what that is. So that's what I need. And so then I put that in my job title. And everybody else, by the way, has to know what an AI strategist is. It can't be this morphing term that could mean this, that, or the other, which is why you have immediately on LinkedIn, as our viewer was saying, 100 applications. And let's be honest, 95% of those are AI generated.
Right.
Every role.
So the title of this show that we talked about, or the thumbnail of the show, is prepping for tomorrow's jobs today. And the first key skill that you need is to explain what AI can do and what you can do with AI in the context of their business and the position. And your ability to do that, I think, is like the foot in the door, the key. Do it on LinkedIn and write things like that. Do it on Medium if you have long form. Join us on YouTube, right? But I think that those are the first key skills: being an amazing explainer and bridging what the industry is and what you can do with it, I think, is like the very first prep skill and can get you pretty far right now, I think. So good luck to all of you who are looking for jobs. I made the call out yesterday. If you are in that thing, send an email to the Daily AI Show at gmail.com, because we would love to follow your journey. And maybe there's some shows that we can, or interviews or that kind of stuff that we can do with that.
And by the way, we got emails yesterday. So that's
yay. Thank you.
Very, very cool. So for all of you that I'm pointing on the screen here, go check out our inbox, because there actually is some pretty cool stuff in there.
I'd like to provide my summary takeaway from this. And I think we started the show with Aaron pointing out that if you're looking for an AI job, you're not going to find one. There's not enough out there for the many people who are interested already and aficionados of AI, who are seeking something that's going to leverage the skills that they've already developed by being practitioners of AI in their own work. What you can do, and I think you must do, is you need to understand, given the job that you already have, how can AI accelerate your performance of that job? Because if you're not using AI as an accelerant, and everybody in our chat is probably already, but for anybody who's just listening to our show for the first time, my advice is take a job and bring AI to it. Be the seed, inseminate that company. There was a comment here just a little bit before with, let me see if I can scroll back. So yeah, Gwyn was, I don't know, darn, where was it? These chats are hard to follow. Anyway, whoever it was, thank you, pointing out that she was interviewing for a job and she was floored to find that the company didn't understand what AI could do for that job. But she does, and she probably has an advantage. Oh, this is Gareth. I'm sorry.
They.
He has an advantage over other applicants by having that knowledge, that literacy, and the ability to be a more effective employee in that company by leveraging AI skill.
Yeah. No, well said. Well, listen, we'll wrap it up there for today. We have one more show this week coming back tomorrow. It's our 2-week weekly recap show, and what that really means is that it's not us just rehashing the same stuff. It's actually just us going back and revisiting all the topics that we've had over the last 2 weeks. And boy, I couldn't name them all right now if I wanted to. I'd have to go look. We always have new topics. Obviously, we talked about the blueprint and all the sorts of news and Stargate, and then the World Economic Forum from today, and so many other things we talked about last week. So it's a great opportunity for us to go back, dig a little bit deeper into those. Sometimes there's new revelations, new news that has come out on some of those, and so we're able to bring that into it. And oftentimes, sometimes we just, you didn't get to the point you wanted to make because the show is going and other people are talking. And so sometimes it's a great point to go, I really wanted to come back to this. I've been thinking about this since we talked about it. And this is what I want to do. So it's always one of my favorite shows. That'll be happening tomorrow. It's always filled with insights and just a great conversation overall. So come back tomorrow and join us for that show. And of course, we'll be here all next week as well. You can go to thedailyishow.com if you want to sign up for the newsletter. That'll be going out on Sunday mornings, as it always does. It's free to sign up for. I'm always adding additional content into it. So go sign up for that for free. If you like what we're doing, you want to get more, obviously a like or subscribe goes a long way for us as well on whatever platform you might be listening or watching us on. By the way, we found out that we're in the top 5% of video podcasts on Spotify. So thank you to everybody. We talk a lot about YouTube, but thank you to everybody on Spotify. Top 5% of video podcasts is a big, big deal. So we're growing on all the platforms, wherever you happen to be watching or listening to us. We appreciate you. And when you can, join the conversation. Like I said, we're here live 5 days a week, 10 a.m. Eastern. Best place to do that is to come over wherever all our friends are here in the YouTube chat and get part of the conversation if you can make it. So that's it. Thank you. Thank you for people saying congratulations. We appreciate it. Yeah, we love that with the Spotify. So thank you. That's it. We will see you guys tomorrow for our 2-week recap show. Have a great one, guys. Bye.
Bye.